I have a question about rendering information from one language text to another without losing or adding any meaning. Do you know what that's called?
Let's look at the options together. What's the first one?
The first option is transcreation. Is this the correct term?
No. Transcreation is more about creatively adapting content from one language to another, often used in marketing and advertising to maintain the same impact and context rather than just translating word for word. It can involve changes to make the text more culturally relevant.
Got it. The next option is translation. Could that be the right answer?
Yes, translation is the correct term. It involves rendering information from one language text to another language text without loss or addition of meaning. The goal is to preserve the original meaning as closely as possible in the target language.
That makes sense. The third option is transcription. What about this one?
Transcription is the process of converting spoken language into written text, often used in contexts like transcribing interviews or speeches. It doesn't involve converting between different languages.
Okay, so that's not it. The last option is transliteration. Is this the correct one?
No, transliteration is about converting text from one script to another, like writing Arabic words using the Latin alphabet. It focuses on preserving pronunciation rather than meaning.
So, to summarize, the correct answer is translation, because it involves rendering information from one language text to another without loss or addition of meaning.
Exactly. Translation is the right choice here.
I have a question about rendering information from one language text to another without losing or adding any meaning. Do you know what that's called?
Let's look at the options together. What's the first one?
The first option is transcreation. Is this the correct term?
No. Transcreation is more about creatively adapting content from one language to another, often used in marketing and advertising to maintain the same impact and context rather than just translating word for word. It can involve changes to make the text more culturally relevant.
Yes, translation is the correct term. It involves rendering information from one language text to another language text without loss or addition of meaning. The goal is to preserve the original meaning as closely as possible in the target language.
That makes sense. The third option is transcription. What about this one?
Transcription is the process of converting spoken language into written text, often used in contexts like transcribing interviews or speeches. It doesn't involve converting between different languages.
Okay, so that's not it. The last option is transliteration. Is this the correct one?
No, transliteration is about converting text from one script to another, like writing Arabic words using the Latin alphabet. It focuses on preserving pronunciation rather than meaning.
So, to summarize, the correct answer is translation, because it involves rendering information from one language text to another without loss or addition of meaning.
I need some help with a question about the technical terms used for past categories in the Sanskrit grammatical tradition. Can we go through the options together?
The first option is Namakriya, Visesana, Nipata. Is this correct?
No, that's not entirely accurate. While these are related to parts of speech, the terms nama, noun, kriya, verb, and Visesana, adjective, don't fully align with the traditional Sanskrit grammatical categories. And Nipata is correct for particles, but the overall set isn't complete.
Got it. The next option is Nama, Akyata, Apasarga, Nipata. Could this be the right answer?
Yes, this is the correct answer. In the Sanskrit grammatical tradition, nama refers to nouns, akyata to verbs, apasarga to prefixes, and nipata to particles. This set accurately represents the past categories used in traditional Sanskrit grammar.
That makes sense. The third option is Sarvanama, Kriyapada, Apasarga, Nipata. What about this one?
This one is close but not quite right. Sarvanama means pronoun and Kriyapada means verb, which are correct categories, but not the exact traditional technical terms. Also, Apasarga and Nipata are correct, but the set isn't fully aligned with the traditional terms.
Okay, so that's not it. The last option is Nama, Akyata, Kriya, Nipata. Is this the correct one?
No, this option is incorrect due to a slight inconsistency in the terms. Nama and Akyata are correct, but Kriya should be Akyata as well, and Nipata is correct. The slight deviations make it not fully accurate.
So, to summarize, the correct answer is nama, akyata, apasarga, nipata, because these terms accurately represent the past categories in Sanskrit grammatical tradition.
I have a question about the nature of click consonants found in the languages of South Africa. Can you help me figure out the correct description?
Let's go through the options together. What's the first one?
The first option is ingressive. Does that describe click consonants correctly?
Yes, click consonants are indeed ingressive. This means that the airflow is directed inward when these sounds are produced.
Got it. The next option is aggressive. Is that correct?
No, click consonants are not aggressive. Aggressive sounds are produced with outward airflow, which is not the case for click consonants.
Okay, the third option is velaric. What about this one?
Yes, click consonants are velaric. This means that the airstream mechanism involves the back of the tongue making contact with the velum, the soft part of the roof of the mouth.
That makes sense. The next option is glottalic. Is this the correct description?
No, click consonants are not glottalic. Glottalic sounds involve the glottis and are either aggressive ejectives or ingressive implosives, which is different from the mechanism used for clicks.
And the last option is uvular. Is this correct?
No, click consonants are not uvular. Uvular sounds involve the uvula, which is the small fleshy extension at the back of the soft palate, and this is not the case for clicks.
So, the options that describe click consonants correctly are ingressive and velaric.
Exactly, Alice. The correct combination is A and C only, meaning click consonants are both ingressive and velaric.
I have a question about the two main processes of morphology. Can you help me figure out which ones are correct?
The first option is complementation. Is this one of the main processes of morphology?
No, complementation is not a main process in morphology. It's more related to syntax, where it deals with how different phrases complement each other in a sentence.
Got it. The next option is inflection. Is this correct?
Yes, inflection is definitely one of the main processes in morphology. It involves modifying a word to express different grammatical categories such as tense, case, voice, aspect, person, number, gender, and mood.
That makes sense. The third option is rule ordering. Is that a main process of morphology?
No, rule ordering is a concept more related to phonology, where it involves the sequence in which phonological rules are applied. It's not a main morphological process.
Okay, the next option is nominalization. Is this one correct?
Nominalization is a morphological process where a verb or an adjective is converted into a noun, but it's not one of the two main processes. It's more specific and less fundamental compared to the main processes.
And the last option is derivation. Is this a main process?
Yes, derivation is one of the main processes of morphology. It involves creating a new word by adding prefixes or suffixes, thereby changing the meaning or the part of speech of the original word.
So, the main processes are inflection and derivation.
I have a question about the different ways a set can be specified. Can we go through the options together?
The first option is by listing all its members. Is this a valid way to specify a set?
Yes, that's definitely a valid way to specify a set. It's called the roster method or enumeration, where you list out each element of the set explicitly.
Got it. The next option is by stating a property which an object must qualify as a member. Is this correct?
Yes, that's another valid way to specify a set. This method involves describing a characteristic or property that the elements of the set share, also known as the set builder notation.
Okay, the third option is by defining a set of rules which generates its members. Is this a valid method?
Yes, this is also a valid way to specify a set. Defining a set of rules or a generative process can specify which elements belong to the set.
The last option is by automatically deleting items from a list. Is this correct?
No, that's not a standard method for specifying a set. Sets are generally defined by inclusion, not by deletion.
So, the valid ways are by listing all its members, by stating a property which an object must qualify as a member, and by defining a set of rules which generates its members.
I need some help with a question about the Chomsky hierarchy. It asks which grammar types do not explain a production mechanism where a dagger indicates X, B, or a dagger indicates X. Can we go through the options together?
The first option is type 1. Does this grammar type explain the production mechanism? A dagger indicates X, B, or a dagger indicates X.
Type 1 grammars, also known as context-sensitive grammars, allow productions where the length of the output string is at least as long as the input string. The productions a dagger indicates X, B, and a dagger indicates X fit within this framework because they don't reduce the string length unconditionally. So, type 1 grammars can explain this.
Got it. The next option is type 2. Does this fit the production mechanism?
Type 2 grammars, or context-free grammars, have productions of the form a dagger indicates E plus minus sign, or alpha, whereas a non-terminal and E plus minus sign is a string of terminals and non-terminals. Both a dagger indicates X, B, and a dagger indicates X fit this form, so type 2 grammars can also explain this.
Okay, the third option is type 3. Does this grammar type explain the mechanism?
Type 3 grammars, or regular grammars, have productions of the form a dagger indicates A, or a dagger indicates A, where A and B are non-terminals and A is a terminal. The production a dagger indicates X, B fits this form if X is a terminal, and a dagger indicates X fits the form if X is a terminal. So, type 3 grammars can explain this too.
The last option is type 0. What about this one?
Type 0 grammars, or unrestricted grammars, allow any production rules. Therefore, they can certainly explain a dagger indicates X, B, and a dagger indicates X, as they can handle any production rule.
So, the valid grammar types that explain this production mechanism are type 1, type 2, type 3, and type 0.
Correct. The question asks which grammar types do not explain this, and that would be none of them from the individual options. But when we consider the combined options, A, B, D only indicates that type 1, type 2, and type 0 are considered together, implying the answer must align with the types that do explain this. The correct choice is A, B, D only, because types 1, 2, and 0 all explain this mechanism, leaving type 3 out.
I have a question about how functions are represented in set theory. The question is about which terms a function is generally not represented as. Can we go through the options together?
The first option is relation. Is a function represented as a special kind of relation?
Yes, in set theory, a function is indeed a special kind of relation. Specifically, it's a relation where each input is related to exactly one output.
Got it. The next option is element. Is a function represented as a special kind of element?
No, a function is not generally considered an element. In set theory, elements are the individual objects within sets, but a function itself is more complex and involves pairs of elements rather than being a single element.
Okay, the third option is item. What about this one?
Similarly, item isn't a standard term used in set theory to describe functions. An item is a more general term and doesn't specifically relate to how functions are represented.
And the last option is term. Is a function a special kind of term?
No, a term isn't typically used to represent a function in set theory. A term can refer to elements or expressions in logic, but not specifically to the concept of a function.
So, the correct combination of terms that a function is generally not represented as includes element, item, and term.
I need some help understanding the speech act theory. There are several statements about it, and I need to figure out which ones are true. Can we go through them together?
The first statement is, it tells us that people use language to express emotions and ideas only. Is this true?
No, that's not true. Speech act theory actually tells us that people use language not just to express emotions and ideas, but also to perform actions. This includes making requests, promises, apologies, and more.
Got it. The next statement is, it tells us that people use language to do things as well. Is this correct?
Yes, that's correct. This is one of the core ideas of speech act theory. It highlights that language can be used to perform actions.
All right. The third statement is, verbs relating to do things are called performative verbs. Is this accurate?
Yes, that's also correct. Performative verbs are verbs that, when used in a certain way, perform the action they describe, like promise, apologize, or declare.
Sure thing. The main objective is the grand quest. That is, to explore the relationship between the use of modern teaching techniques and the student performance. So that's the main objective, the grand quest, to explore the relationship between the use of modern teaching techniques and the performance of the students after having applied those modern teaching techniques on the students. So it's like a grand quest overall. That's main objective. That's the main objective.
No, that's not accurate. Illocutionary force refers to the intention behind the speech act, not the verbs themselves. It's about what the speaker intends to achieve with their utterance.
The fifth statement is, in the case of performative verbs, the illocutionary force is stated overtly. Is this correct?
Yes, that's true. When performative verbs are used, the illocutionary force, or the intended action, is usually clear and explicit.
Exactly. Statements it tells us that people use language to do things as well. Verbs relating to do things are called performative verbs, and in the case of performative verbs, the illocutionary force is stated overtly. Are all correct?
I came across this question about Americosa, a 4th CE work of lexicography. It's asking how words are organized in it. Can we tackle it together?
Alright folks, now we're talking about the star of the day. Who is it? Triangulation.
Well, organizing by parts of speech is a classic move, but in the 4th century, they were probably like, who needs grammar when you've got meaning? So no, that's not the one.
Haha, good point. Next up is semantic classes. Do they go all philosophical and sort by meaning?
Bingo. That's one of them. Semantic classes are like the VIP sections for words with similar meanings. It's a bit like sorting your friends by their favorite ice cream flavors.
That's pretty cool. The next option is morphosyntactic categories. Did they go all fancy and technical with morphology and syntax?
As much as I love a good morphosyntactic shindig, that's not what they did here. Americosa kept it simpler.
Got it. Then we have synonymy. So, did they just throw together words that mean the same thing?
Absolutely. Synonymy is like their way of saying, why use one word when you can use 10? It's like a synonym party and everyone's invited.
Haha, a synonym party sounds wild. So, combining options, we have semantic classes and synonymy as the true organizers, right?